Good morning everyone and welcome back to Dev Parkour. I'm Brian Parks, and in this video I want to talk about memory leaks. Specifically, I had a coworker at a previous job who liked to ask in his interviews, this was a C# job, he would ask candidates if it was possible to have a memory leak in managed code. And what that question really gets to the root of is, do you understand what a memory leak is and how you can create one? And I'm sure there would have been a follow-up question as to how can you defend against memory leaks. So I want to talk about kind of the first half of that in this video, and talk about what a memory leak is and if/how it's possible to have a memory leak in managed code. The short answer is yes, it is possible to have a memory leak in managed code, and it doesn't matter if it's C#, JavaScript, PHP, anything that does. I mean, realistically, anything. But typically we have this conception that it's really easy to have a memory leak in code where you have to manage your own memory, like C# C or C++, right? C you can malloc and then never free, and if you just lose access to that memory, then it's a leak. C++, same sort of thing. You can new something up and then never delete it, and if you no longer have access to that memory, then it's a leak. The same thing can happen in managed code, where you new something up and then there's some garbage collection process, or in something like Swift or Objective-C, where you have automatic reference counting. There are some automatic reference counting implementations for C++ as well, to try to get around that issue. But even in those languages, in those scenarios, you can still have memory leaks. The definition of a memory leak is you have a piece of memory that you have lost access to. Doesn't really matter how you've lost access to it, but you've lost access to it. And the most common way to do that in a managed language, again, because there's garbage collection, is to create a cycle. Now there are some garbage collection techniques that are getting better, and I think the C# one is actually pretty good on this front, where if you do have a cycle between objects that refer to each other, and I'll explain exactly what I mean in just a minute. If you have a cycle where the cycle is inaccessible to the rest of your code, the garbage collector can detect that and do the right thing. But that is a very hard problem to deal with, and the people who work on garbage collectors are really smart engineers, because this is a really difficult problem, and this is why lots of programming languages for the longest time didn't have this sort of thing. It was all manage your own memory, right? C and C++ were the standard for decades, and in those languages you had to manage your own memory. There were some paradigms that made it easier, so you wouldn't forget to clean up your memory, but you still had to manage your own memory, to the extent that some of the manuals for some of the C functions specifically tell you whether you control the memory or you simply have access to it, and in some cases what function to call to free up the memory in some more complex scenarios. So anyway, what do I mean by a cycle? It's basically you create an object, you get a reference to it, you create another object, and then you have the second object refer to the first object object refer to the second object. Now typically, if you're going to do that, you would have the client code, the code that's using that's those two objects together, would have a reference to the first object or the second object, or both, and the references between the two objects are just for convenience. So you can call a method on the second object and it knows about the first object. You don't have to always give it the reference to the first object in order for it to know what it's supposed to be doing. And I'm sure we can get into a conversation about, is that good architecture, is that bad architecture, also along the lines of dependency injection and stuff like that. But I'll leave that to future videos, maybe to the comments. If you have a thought on that, go ahead and leave a comment. But the moral of the story being that if you have one of those cycles, you have to make sure that when it comes time to be done with those objects, you make it very clear that you're done. Remove all references to the objects that you want to get rid of. Now, obviously, that's a very simple example, and like I said, I don't think that's an issue in most garbage collectors these days anymore. But you can get yourself in really complex situations where there are cycles that are less easy for the automated tools to spot. So you might have a tree where some node deep in the tree refers back to the root, or some node really deep in the tree refers to some other object that refers to the root. Something where there is still a cycle, but it's a really big cycle. There's a lot of objects involved. As far as being able to detect these things, these are probably things that you're not going to find just by looking at the code. You might see, Visual Studio now has the window on the right hand side. It's kind of like a mini profiling tool, which is good. I have caught some issues like this way using that tool. But you might see your memory usage going up and up and up, and if you can see it go up at specific points, especially as you're stepping through, you can maybe tell that maybe like every time you hit a specific line of code, you see the memory usage jump up, and you think that you're just using that code, like you're hitting that code once and then you're done with it, and the objects you're using shouldn't be needed anymore, so it should be able to clean them up. But you're seeing the garbage collector run, and your memory usage keeps going up and up and up. In those cases, you might be able to see, hey, maybe I've got a leak here. There are also specific tools. I think JetBrains has one. I think Redgate has one. There are a few other companies that have memory profiling tools, specifically memory profiling tools, that have a memory leak detection feature. Those tools, they are a little bit pricey. So if you're just a solo developer, you're probably not going to have the budget for something like that. But if you're working at a company, I highly recommend using one of those tools, at least having someone on your team who has access to one of those tools. So you can run it against your software, and it will catch a good number of leaks. The key with that is that because leaks require the program to run, it's not a static analysis thing. I think some of the simpler ones can be found through static analysis. But what I'm talking about, not a static analysis thing. Your program has to run, and you really have to run the program through its paces. So if you run the program, but you never hit the line of code that causes a leak, these leak detection tools will not find the leak. So you can profile in, say a staging environment where you run your suite of integration or end-to-end tests against it. That might give a pretty good baseline of most of the things your app can do, and see if we can detect any leaks. But yeah, use a tool. Short answer: in order to detect leaks, use a tool. Don't try looking through the code. You might find some things, you might find some hot spots, but really your best bang for your buck, and the best bang for your time especially, is to use a leak detection tool. I think that's going to do it for this video. Hope you enjoyed that. Go ahead and leave a thumbs up if you did. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Again, starting next week, well, I guess starting this week, but really starting next week, we'll be diving into GlassMinnow, the project that I'm scaling from legacy application all the way to scalable, ideally cloud native application. I'm really excited about that. I've been working on it here and there over the past week, and even doing some research on it in weeks prior. I'm really excited about it. It's really cool. There's going to be some really cool videos coming out about that. So please subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell so you'll be notified when those videos come out. and I'll see you tomorrow.